Welcome to Insight, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odipo. I hope you'd enjoy this episode of Insight as we talk about the public perception of migrants and the reportage of migrant-related issues. We should also discuss other levels of formal education in Nigeria, but that will be coming from my colleague and co-presenter, Elizabeth Omoriyi. Elizabeth?
Well, in this week's edition, we'll focus on the education sector and possibly check out ways of promoting basic education.
Very well. Let's get started. A lot is known and have been said about migration, whether regular or irregular. However, it is becoming clearer by the day that negative perception of migration can derive from negative reportage of migration issues. I have a guest with me to discuss this issue, and is Reverend Father Emeka Christ Obiezu, Director, Augustinian Center for Advocacy, Justice and Development, and National Coordinator, Civil Society Network on Migration and Development, CSO NetMate. Welcome to Insight, Father.
Thank you, Nnamdi. It's my pleasure being here again.
Just so I make this clear from the onset, the media is a necessary partner and ally in the reportage of migration issues. And I mean, maybe that is why I find it quite difficult to accept the outcomes of some studies which indicates that the Nigerian media is in its infancy on the coverage of migration issues. Is that a valid argument, and can you rationalize that point of view?
Yeah, thank you. Just as you said, the media in Nigeria has been, I wouldn't use the word infancy at the infancy stage, but I would also say that the reportage of migration issue is relative to the Nigerian government, Nigerian society embrace of the issue of migration. Even though we are a highly migration country, the attention given to migration as a systematic approach has been very recent. By this I mean that there have been no constructed approach to responding to issues of migration in such a way that it mainstreams the governance of migration into the development plan of the country. For that reason, it would also be expected that media, which plays a very strong role in the shaping of popular opinion, as well as influencing the policymakers on certain issues of importance, would necessarily be coming up as lately as the whole society is coming up lately in the migration issue. So in that direction, I would say yes, it is at infancy stage, just as the whole issue of migration management is at infancy stage in the country.
Father, we'll talk about the issue of institutions much later in the course of our discussion, but I'd like to talk to you now about a reporter's perception and how that is likely to impact on the reportage of migration issues. That can vary from person to person depending on their location, or maybe I should rephrase and say, can that vary from person to person depending on their location and past experiences? And I'll give you an example, Father. Okay. I often assume that my personal historical perception of migration is most likely to be different from that of a UK-born and trained journalist. How impactful can that be? So much that it can affect the slant of a reporter's account of a story on migration.
Yeah, that is very true, and it is a reality of the issue of bordering migration narrative and migration management. Just as we said in the first approach to this conversation, that for the fact that Nigeria has not been paying systematic attention to migration issue, it would also necessarily be that the media would follow the trend with which the society does that. Now, when you pay attention to migration issue, it comes to you from different directions. The directions in this sense captures the trends and the dynamics that determine or define the perspective of your own particular migration. And this is where location comes in. Nigeria is basically a country of origin. In other words, we have more sending capacity of migrants outside Nigeria, even though we receive a lot of people as immigrants into the country. And there are also people who pass through Nigeria to other places in their migratory process. Nevertheless, the undertone of migration in Nigeria is that of origin. And just like you use the UK, for example, UK is more of a receiving country. And so the media of the UK will be paying attention on the impact of migration in their country as a destination country. In other words, they will be looking at what the migrants who come into their country do to their economy and the social well-being. Why Nigerian journalists might be looking at what are the impacts of Nigerians leaving Nigeria to other countries, and to what extent does that also impact our development and our economy. But most times too, again, because migration is thickly related with the issue of politics, the defining factor of political terrain of a country also play much role into how the media reports migration. For instance, if there is a very charged nationalistic approach to issues of migration that informs political positions and opinion, you will necessarily find out that media will pay such attention. For instance, in the UK and other European country, in the last few years, the overturn of the number of people coming into Europe due to the crisis around the world, especially the Syria crisis, that opened more volume of people into Europe, made the countries in Europe, UK inclusive, very particular in paying attention to the impact of migration into their country. And for that reason, there are so many approaches, sometimes negative, that media also put on the form in the popular position, popular space, that influence what politicians do in the parliament and what the citizens do in the public space. And of course, Nigeria perspective of that from journalists' point of view also play into the roles, like the news we hear, what the Nigerians are going through in such countries, and what we call the brain drain of Nigerians leaving our shores to other places.
Father, somewhat you've tried to link national culture and press culture, and yes, that's an issue I'd like to take you up on somewhere down the line. But, okay. Yeah, but just before then, I'd like for you to respond to the issue of the use of terminologies.
Yes.
And I'd like for you to talk to me some more on the importance of terminology to the immigration debate. I'm sure you're aware that the word migrant means something ugly in Hungarian. It means an enemy out to kill someone. So while it sounds correct and safe in English, not so much in Hungarian, how do we balance the use of terminologies and a national context in reporting immigration issues?
Yeah, migration discourse is one terrain where use of terminology plays a very high role. Because what you call something is actually what you how you deal with that thing. For instance, what we often hear mostly in terms of terminology, you will easily hear people in the media in particular use concepts like illegal migrations, illegal migrants. They mix up asylum seeker, refugee, IDP. We don't know who is talking about. So such confusions in terms would also lead to confusion in policy. If you don't get it clear, and you can also incite public on a kind of narrative you put out there. So it demands a particular attention of enlightenment and capacity building, especially for media, to learn and know these terminologies, use them appropriately. For instance, I use that concept illegal migration, but I'm so happy that at the beginning of this process, you correctly use the terms regular and irregular. Yes. For the fact that the term legal and illegal seems simply to criminalize the migrants. And in 1975, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution that due to the human nature of the mobility of mobility associated with migration, that no human being should be termed illegal on any account. irrespective of the fact that they might have gone through irregular means, such as not obtaining necessary documents or not taking the true processes of getting into another country's border. Yet that does not criminalize the person. And so in that instance, if you continue to use the word illegal, you are only criminalizing the migrant and also putting it out there for policymakers and for political reasons also, for such person to be either victimized and also exploited, as the case may be. And of course, I've used terms like refugee, migrant, asylum seeker, migrant, who is a diaspora, what is the difference between a diaspora and a migrant. All these things are terminologies that are very essential in determining migration in terms of managing it. Yeah.
And I mean, just to buttress some of what you said, and I'll take you back to the issue of that you raised earlier on national culture or identity and press culture. I understand that press culture can influence policy outcomes.
Yes.
But how significantly has that affected national policies of some countries across the world? And I mean, these policies vary from country to country. But, Father, hypothetically,
yes,
would a moderate press invariably and necessarily lead to a moderate immigration regime in a country?
Yes, I think I would say that without, I mean, going into deeper research to say that perception is a very high key in management of every issue. And perceptions most times are informed and formed by the press. So if the press puts out a very moderate approach and narrative that respects the humanity of the migrant and presents also the both sides of the story of migration, it will necessarily influence how the whole management of migration is done. For instance, one of the challenges that excited or incited xenophobia and racism in some countries are issues like when press put up there that migrants are swarming into our cities, migrants have taken up all our jobs, migrants are criminals. You know, all those type of things would necessarily incite such actions that are very detrimental to the well-being of migrants. And it will not be out of place to see that those on political positions might also weigh into this, using such narratives to make or score political points.
You've thrown up the issue of perception. I mean, you've mentioned that literally like almost a dozen times since we started this. Yes. But let me just quickly state something, because I can appreciate that the press has, there are various theories of communications.
Yes.
And one of them is the agenda setting function of the press, and of course also the gatekeeping. This allows the media to push out issues, and they help form perception and opinions. And there's also the issue of, there's also that of the persuasion theory of communication. But, and this is debatable, because I feel, and this is a personal opinion, that my people have, Father, you're also Igbo, so you'd understand this adage that the old woman does not learn how to dance in her old age.
Yes.
It's a very popular Igbo saying. So that when or once an opinion or an attitude or a perception has been formed,
yes,
is it not difficult to change once it is there? Because the theory of the communication theory of persuasion recognizes that fact, that it may be difficult to change someone's attitude or opinion or perception once it has been formed in an earlier stage prior to when that person got that information.
Yes, I'm happy you're bringing that up, and also want to take you back to a psychology of development, which also acknowledges the reality of what you have said, but also distinguishes between difficulty and impossibility. It is difficult to change, but it is not impossible. And that is why we record incremental success. You know, it doesn't mean that when you go out there, you change it tomorrow, all of a sudden. But we believe that when it tickles down, even if it's like a drop by a drop, and this is why we have embarked on a process of educating or building the capacity of media agencies in the country. We just did 3 of such trainings in 3 locations to geopolitical zones. Now, what we do here is we set out to engage with the media practitioners of all kinds, print, electronic, and radio, and all of this, and we have seen the remarkable impact this has made in the fact that the outcome of it, in a way of the media production they have put up after that. I'm sure not that if we continue in this direction, it might take us long, but we are recording success in that direction. So in other words, what I'm saying by effect is that, as much as we recognize that it's difficult to get this changed overnight, it is also possible that it could change gradually. And we are building on the positive nature of that gradual change to continue it, build also using the outcome, experiences of the outcome of our engagement so far to progress in this direction.
Let's stay on this line of thoughts and talk some more about the impact of migration and how that could influence perception. Take, for instance, how large population puts pressure, I beg your pardon, on natural resources, and of course also on amenities and services.
Yeah.
Father, don't you agree that a situation like that is compelled to create bad blood over time? I mean, no matter the initial welcoming spirit of the original natives or nationals of an environment being impacted.
Like I said, one of the major things that makes migration a contentious issue in society is because, one, not just because of the definition of the migrant as the other, in other words, not us. But for the fact that the presence of migrants in a community adds pressure to maybe sometimes already bad economic situation. And so when such number come in, receiving community are worried of their presence because it means pressure. If you are catering for 5,000 people originally, you'll be catering for 510,000 now because of their presence. So people who have one tested direction, opinion of this kind of influence of the presence of migrants will begin to see it negatively, that this would surely derail their own development. But what we are saying in essence is that you can help correct that perception and also help them to appreciate this by balancing the story.
Okay.
Letting them know the impact of these people's presence, positive impact of their presence in that community. Okay. There are services they bring. There is a value they bring to the existing culture. There is complementarity that comes with what you don't have that other persons comes in. And this variety that is so woven in an interrelated communication or relationship makes a healthy living of a diverse community, which our world today has become. No matter how remote your village is today, you will find that they are not as homogeneous as it used to be before. More people have come in and are still coming in. Yeah, people are going out to go somewhere else. And so sometimes we remind the media to remember that most of you who are also media persons might actually be a migrant where you are. Because, for instance, I've used Abuja for example. Let me know how many of us who work in Abuja here are indigenous of this place. And if we do not relate to that, we'll be talking about migration as something across the Mediterranean Sea. But we're talking about something so close to us.
So it's very relatable.
It's very relatable. And then Abuja cannot wake up one day. All the Gwari people cannot wake up one day and say, these people go away because they have just taken away. But they also know the value that the presence of these people have brought to this particular community. So what is needed is a balanced story. Okay. To say it is a give and take. And what enables us to manage it is what we call that understanding, tolerance, and the humanity that goes with the reality of migration. Because we necessarily move, we have to move. It belongs to our nature to move when things are no longer favorable to us.
It's an evolving issue, and
Yes.
it's quite fascinating and interesting as well. And I am sure you're aware that news outlets like the NTA cover migration issues as specialized beats, and in spite of the aggressive enlightenment of both, I mean, the public on both the dangers of irregular migration and the need to accept, tolerate, and integrate migrants, especially refugees, we still see xenophobic tendencies in some countries. But let's simplify, and that's what you've been talking about, creating balance in reportage of this, of migration issues. How can the journalists, a journalist now, or indeed the news media outlet, report or cover migration issues to engender peace and development? And I mean, ideally.
Yeah. You know, like I said to you, we had conducted training for media persons in 3 geopolitical zones: South, Southeast, and Northwest. We came back to Abuja last week to do a harmonization of ethical guidelines which we have put out for media people.
And that's your group now?
Yes, my group, Civil Society Network on Migration and Development. We did that in collaboration with International Organization for Migration, IOM, on a project that EU is helping Nigeria.
Yeah, you spoke to the impact earlier on in the course of our discussion.
Yes.
Is that bearing fruits? You said you've started already to see some products of the trainings that you've had.
Yes, a lot of impact. They have done, actually one of the things we did in the last Abuja event was to host what we call a media production contest. And so we sent out to all the people we have trained, give us the latest production on media, on migration in your media. And then we gathered and do selection of the best that use correct terms, respected terms and trends. And we found out that from this, that a good number of them have moved dramatically to the positive balanced approach of reporting migration.
And that is the ideal way to...
That is the ideal way to do it. Now, I want to hint on what you said. How would this help to engender peace and development? You know, it might be interesting to find out that the Nigerian media is not only talking about what xenophobia or xenophobic attitudes people display to Nigerians outside, but Nigerian media also, like most Nigerians, report about Nigerian migrants as, you know, people who are, you know, not patriotic, people who run away from this country to other places. So that is how they see them. You know, but I call their mind to say, do you actually know that these people who you say run away from this country help a lot in developing Nigeria, even when they are struggling? Many of them in a very tight, strong situation. Last year alone, with the period of COVID and all the rest, this number of persons have sent in cash. I'm not talking of other material things. Send in cash of over $23 billion US. And they were visible actors that helped Nigerian government in responding to COVID by providing both the private preventive equipment and other things and the processes of how to do it. So if we look at such things, and when you are narrating your story of migration, and let your community hear this, that these people are also helping to do this. Many of them come here on a regular basis to do medical mission, help our hospitals to equip hospitals, conduct medical services. Many take the same thing in education. Some have done an intertwining of intellectual exchange between Nigerians here and Nigerians out there. So this kind of attitude, when we put it out there, we would make people know that, okay, migration is actually a human thing that has both positive and negative impact, but it has greater opportunity of development.
We're totally out of time now, but just before I let you go, is there an area or an issue on this subject matter that you'd like to throw up? Just in less than 60 seconds, if you can.
I want to say thank you to media, and let media know that they still have a strong role to play by making migration what it is, beneficial to all, by reporting it humanly as is possible. Thank you.
Reverend Father Emeka Chris Obiezu, Director, Augustinian Center for Advocacy, Justice and Development, and National Coordinator, Civil Society Network on Migration and Development, CSO CSO Netsmade. That's a mouthful, Father. I wish to thank you so much for coming on the program. You've been a delight, and I wish you the very best as you continue this advocacy on behalf of migrants and refugees.
Thank you, Nana. Thank you, NTA. And I hope to be here some other time.
Elizabeth Omoru is up next.
In 1999, the Nigerian government introduced Universal Basic Education, a program to provide free primary and secondary education for all. This program was created after several unsuccessful attempts at improving education in the country, although there have been some improvements in enrollments in recent times. Today, we will be chatting with a member of the House Committee on Basic Education, Awaji Inombek Abiente, on the issue. Sir, it's nice to have you join us on Insights.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Okay, Nigerians would like to know, has this initiative achieved its objectives over the years?
You see, the issues are varied. The issues are also different and diverse. Before this time, there were attempts, just like you mentioned, one of which was the Universal Primary Education, UP, that came in before Universal Basic Education. The difference is that this one attempted to accommodate pupils or students up to the basic 3 level in secondary school. That is the class 3, basic 3, or basic 9, as the case may be, depending on how you define it. Before now, what has been our challenge relative to education? Our challenge relative to education has been the ability to read and write. That has been our challenge relative to education, by my own perspective. Is that still the same challenge today? If you ask me, the answer is no.
Okay.
Because the reading and writing relative to education has never answered the problems. It has never provided jobs for people who have gone through that process. So if our educational curriculum had been looked at conclusively, inclusively, to provide answers to the questions, probably we would have done better. And what are the questions? Hands-on. Attempts were made. Monies were voted for. The provision of materials, they called it intro-take at that level. Where are the materials? Yes, the program is attempting to encourage enrollment. The program is attempting to provide infrastructure relative to classroom, instructional materials that are not relevant, to acquisition of skills. So there is a need, there is a challenge to see how we can push this beyond where we are today. It's not just in terms of the policies. We have to look at how it is managed, how it is supervised, and the deliveries that we're getting from the policies that we have laid out.
Okay. You would agree with me that the federal government is doing so much to reduce drastically the number of out-of-school children with several programs to encourage schooling. What seems to be the problem with family and society not embracing basic education to take away the burden from government?
In some climes, in some areas, in some cases, the questions that will be asked will include, what is the quality of what is delivered? Most public institutions, public schools, from the very basic, from the primary level, what is the quality of what they have? Even to the point of acquiring a university degree, they come out, and it is at that point that some will begin to go and learn tailoring. Some will begin to go and learn fashion designing or hairdressing or whatever, just to make sure that they get themselves busy. The question is, what can your education do for you? What problems can that education that you have acquired, what problem can it solve? What is the return on the investment of your parents from nursery up to when you acquire whatever degrees, whatever certificates that you have acquired? Is it just that you acquire a certificate and put it under your pillow? That is not the essence of sending one to school. That is not the essence of that education. If it is just for the purpose of enlightenment, you can be enlightened even without getting to any conventional educational facility.
How do we meet the SDGs target on education?
First of all, I believe that we should redefine our focus.
Okay.
We should redefine the deliverables. We should redefine our objectives. We should redefine what education should solve. And if we get these things right, and parents, even pupils themselves, are seeing the resultant effect of education, you don't need to drive anybody. You don't need to chase anybody. People, just like it was in the early 70s, in the early 80s, people will on their own crave for it, and they will make sacrifices to ensure that they attain that which is relevant to them.
Okay. You are a member of the Committee on Basic Education. To reduce the figure of out-of-school children, what efforts have been made by the committee?
We have made efforts in interrogating. First of all, you have to know what is available. You also need to know why the expected are not being achieved. It is as a result of our engagements that I have gotten these exposures that I've been talking about. We have gone around some states. We are still going around to interrogate what is on ground relative to what is supposed to be, what has been provided on paper. We are also encouraging the fact that some areas that are challenged, in terms of access, we encourage government to bring that access a little closer to the people. Before now, it is very easy for parents to send their kids to school 20 kilometers, 50 kilometers away from home. But with the recent happenings, it is a lot more challenging for you to even allow your kid to go to the next community to access and acquire education. So the access should be made available. We're also encouraging other incentives that government has put in, like the free school feeding
program,
which is also an incentive that is bringing people back to school. We're also encouraging specifics, targeting the girl child to encourage them to acquire education and to discourage parents from this attitude and perspective of early marriages and all of that. So the committee is interrogating all the factors that need to be interrogated. The committee is also very much interested in seeing how much government can bring back vocational and technical education, because we have seen that that is a gap that will open up our economy, create jobs, and give satisfaction to the education that is acquired by Nigerians.
I would like to take you on the issue of insurgency, the spate of insurgency in some states. What would be the fate of education?
I would appeal to government and all that are in charge and involved in governance to please consider seriously the issues of security, because without security adequately provided, even the issues of food security will be a lot more challenging. Government and those in charge should be able to up their game and ensure that our environment is safe for all to do their legitimate business, including the seeking and the acquisition of knowledge.
Okay. I believe you're in a better position to answer my next question. Security surveillance, whose responsibility? Government, school owners, community, who?
Security, often said, is a very serious business. And if we consider it that serious, every man, every woman, every child, every adult should get involved. Whether you're a traditional ruler, a school teacher, a pupil, an administrator, a mechanic. Because if there is no security, you can't throw your hands in the air. It does not concern. It concerns you. If the roads are not safe, the vulcanizer that enjoys himself pumping 2-3 tires in a day will not find anybody plying that road. If there is no security, the farmer who I say, oh, it doesn't concern me, it is those people in Abuja,
as well.
You cannot go. The trader, you cannot also go to. So it's everybody's business. And the question is, there are people who, by virtue of their training, by virtue of the investment that the state is making on them, have that responsibility to lead from the front and drive the process. So we want to urge them to please lead from the front. And those of us who are saddled with the responsibility of providing framework, we should also be alive to our responsibilities. I want to appeal to Nigerians to forget about whatever conspiracy theories, whatever advantages they think anybody can take, and go in support of the provision of police at the sub-national levels. I think that will also help us to get past where we are in terms of the security challenges.
Awaji Inomic Abiante, Member House Committee on Basic Education, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure always.
Thank you.
Well, just before we wrap up things here, let's refresh our minds on some key recent national issues, but more importantly on how they affect the average Nigerian. Much as these issues continue to resound and challenge our subsistence, whether it is security, ethnic intolerance, governance, and public representation, we keep hope in the promise of better times ahead as we consciously work together for a greater nation. I'd like to recall a conversation I had with an editor of one of Nigeria's leading newspapers on his perception of governance and his concept of escapism. My next guest is the columnist and an associate editor with the Nation newspaper, Olukorede Yishua. I should also mention that he's also a published author. His book, In the Name of Our Father, has been getting lots of great reviews. Olukorede, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Nnamdi. Thank you for having me.
I figure we could easily pick up from where I left off with Dr. Godnose Igali and get your perspective on the leadership question. I read your last piece on your column that you titled The Trouble Still with Nigeria, and you raised several important issues bordering citizenship, ethnicity. You seem to very clearly posit that all of these shouldn't take center stage in determining how leaders emerge in Nigeria. Put that in broader perspective, I beg your pardon, for our viewer.
Okay, well, I would like to start this way. Some years back, I used to work with Tel Magazine, and there was a lady, a white lady, who came for internship with us. And one day we were having a discussion, and she told me she's Canadian and her parents are Briton. And I was like, what do you mean? You should be from where your parents are. That's how it works in Nigeria. If your father is from Ekpe, that means you are from Ekpe, and that means you are from Lagos State. She said no, that she was born in Canada and she's Canadian, and her parents were Briton. And I was like, what's the meaning of this? Well, so she took time to educate me that in their own society, where your parents are from has absolutely nothing to do with your own citizenship. It is where you are born that is considered as where you are. So what should matter really is what can you offer. Where you are from really shouldn't mean anything. And if for whatever reason, okay, maybe because we are a multicultural society and we want everybody to have a sense of belonging, I believe that in picking people based on whether federal character or quota system or whatever, we should pick the best from the area we are trying to give proper representation. It shouldn't be about just the quota system of federal character. What should matter is, okay, this person we are given this job. Can this person do the job? Okay. If the person can't do the job, then we shouldn't give jobs to people who can't do the job. Yes, we're a multicultural society. We need to be sensitive to the feeling of everybody so that we can all feel part of the system. But in doing that, what should matter most should be this person we're giving this job. Can the person do it? If the person cannot do it, then we should look for somebody in the area who can do the job. If you can't do the job, then you shouldn't get the job. That's my take.
Okay. I hear you, Korede. As a prelude to our interview, I read a bit of your book, In the Name of Our Father, which is apparently a satire. It talks about the politics of the June 12, 1993 election. I'm not going to dwell on the details of it, but rather I'll speak on the technique, or rather ask you a question on the technique of using very delicate genre of literature to depict realism. How impactful can a satire be in terms of challenging people's viewpoint on issues of national interest?
Well, the truth is that when people read things, whether fiction or non-fiction, they take one message or the other away from reading. And when people now read a work of fiction, and in reading it, they can sense that this is not just an ordinary work of fiction. There are hidden messages. Like when a colleague read the book, she told me that she considers it a book of codes. That for you to really understand the book, you need to be able to decode the messages. And one thing I've been happy about in the last 2 years that the book has been out is that so many people, especially Nigerians, were able to decode the messages inherent in the book. And once you are able to decode the messages in the book, you can put it into use, really. And when you put it into use, our country will be better for it. And largely, I've seen people who have read the book who have said, this is a book that should be read by politicians. And that it's a book that actually preaches against military governments. It's a book that says that no matter how bad our democracy is, it is better than the best of military rule.
Well, Korede, that is for your book now, but I noticed that in your column as well, you apply the same technique of using satire on issues.
Why I do that a lot of time is because when people read too serious stuff somehow, or when they read things that make them laugh, while laughing, they will also notice that there is actually a message this person is passing across. It's just trying to get us to be soaked in while also passing a message. And I've seen a lot of people read and they get the message. And interestingly, when I won the Columnist of the Year at the Nigerian Media Merit Award some years back, it was actually one of my satiric pieces that won the prize. And my intention in using satire is to draw you in. And in drawing you in, I'm able to pass my messages across to you better than just using straight fictional technique or non-fictional techniques. So the idea behind that is get you to be drawn in with my hyperbolic use of words. And once I do that, my message is passed across. You think that I'm joking, but while doing that, I'm throwing my messages at you, and somehow they stick. And over time, I've seen that people, when I do pieces like that, I get a lot of people either calling me or sending me messages, or when they see me, they tell me that we enjoyed that piece. And funny enough, when I won the Nigerian Media Merit Award some years back, it was actually one of those satiric pieces that I did when I first started my column, known in the nation as Above Whispers. Okay. So generally, satiric pieces draw people in, and the message is easily passed across. So that's why I use the technique a lot of the time.
Korede, you write a lot about leadership and governance, social and economic matters as well, even religion and the arts. I mean, just about every subject that has national appeal. Where do you draw inspiration from, and what determines the direction your column will take each week?
Well, the truth is that there's actually no particular. I don't have what do you call it? A set rule about what I will write next. No set rule really. The inspiration may come from the social media, it may come from a book I've read. It may also come from the fact that, okay, I've seen a video about somebody, then some days back, the person dies, and I find it difficult to reconcile a lot of things about what I've seen. And I just decided, okay, let me put my thoughts together about this as my column for the week.
Let me ask you this, Korede. How does it feel staying in your space, okay, and analyzing socio-political and national issues from your perspective? Do you get a sense of being, powerful, knowing that millions are waiting each week to read what you have to say on these issues?
I initially, when I started doing a column, I didn't take myself too seriously. Then over time, I discovered that people actually take me serious. So I started taking myself also serious. And because of all of that, and the fact that just 1 year after I started writing a column, I won the Nigerian Media Merit Award as columnist of the year. Mm-hmm. I started taking myself more seriously. Then when I write, I also feel a sense of responsibility. I shouldn't just write any kind of nonsense. I should write truthfully.
Okay.
I should only write things my conscience can defend. If I do not feel strongly about any matter, I don't write about it. There are instances where I started my column, and somehow I feel that this is not me, and I abandoned it and start something else all over again. So, yes, the fact that I know that, okay, a lot of people will read the column has made me feel that I should be extremely responsible in treating whatever issues I decide to treat.
Of course, you deserve all of the accolades you've been getting. I've known you for a couple of years now. We've covered stories together over the years, and we've worked together. But just before I let you go, Korede, let me get your thoughts on literary appreciation in Nigeria. Generally, of course, seeing as you are a novelist, are writers getting better appreciation for their works? And do you think Nigerians are reading more?
Well, let me start from the aspect about whether Nigerians are reading more. I think a lot of Nigerians, especially the young ones, they actually read, but the challenge is that when you sell a book for 3,000, 5,000 naira, they may not be able to afford to buy the book. But when you make the book available to them, they actually read.
Okay, I'd also ask them, Korede, if you think writers are getting their due recognition. Would you like to quickly comment on that?
The truth is that in Nigeria, I don't think so. I really don't think so. Most writers who get the kind of appreciation they deserve for their work are people who are actually published abroad. That's where you see that, okay, they are paid royalty, they are paid. Some even get upfront payments for books that have actually not been published, but we don't have that kind of system in Nigeria. The publishing industry is actually, as far as I'm concerned, is struggling.
We hope the times will get better. And that's it on this episode of the program. Do join us same time next week for more on Insights. My name is Nnamdi Adipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. We'll see you next week. Stay safe.